Hello and welcome to my channel. I hope you enjoy this story. I'm going to try and upload a new story each day. A Possessed Doll. It was a cold, blustery evening on the Isle of Wight, and the autumn wind howled as it swept across the quaint village where Holly Arnold had grown up. The seaside town seemed peaceful to an outsider, but beneath its calm surface an ancient curse lingered, one that Holly was about to come face to face with. Holly, now in her late 20s, had returned to her childhood home to care for her ailing mother. The old house, perched on the cliffs overlooking the sea, was filled with memories, some sweet, others haunting. It had been years since Holly had walked through its creaky halls, and though she had moved away to escape the eerie happenings of her youth, there was one item she could never forget: Emily, the doll. As a child, Holly had adored Emily, a porcelain doll with rosy cheeks, bright blue eyes, and long, flowing curls. It had been a gift from her grandmother, passed down through generations. But something had always felt off about the doll. Holly remembered hearing whispers late at night, the doll's glassy eyes seeming to follow her every movement. After one particularly terrifying incident when she was 10, Holly had locked Emily away in the attic and never touched her again. Now, with her mother bedridden and the house falling into disrepair, Holly found herself in the attic once more, sorting through dusty boxes. A chill ran down her spine when she opened an old wooden trunk and saw Emily, untouched by time, staring up at her with those same unblinking eyes. Holly hesitated. Part of her wanted to leave the doll locked away forever, but another part, the part that couldn't resist unraveling the mysteries of her past, reached out and picked Emily up. As soon as she touched the doll, the temperature in the attic seemed to drop. Holly's breath clouded in front of her, and the air grew heavy, oppressive. The old house groaned as if it were alive, and the sound of footsteps echoed from the floor below. Holly! Startled, Holly dropped Emily back into the trunk, slammed it shut, and hurried downstairs. Her mother lay in bed, frail and pale, her eyes glazed over with illness. But when Holly looked closer, something seemed wrong. Her mother's eyes darted to the doorway, then back to Holly. A shudder passed over her face. "Don't open the box," her mother whispered. Her hand trembled as she gripped Holly's wrist with surprising strength. "Well, what box?" Holly asked, but her mother's gaze was unfocused, as if she were looking at something or someone else in the room. The next few days were unsettling. Holly could no longer shake the feeling that she wasn't alone in the house. Doors would open and close on their own, objects would shift slightly when her back was turned, and at night the faint sound of laughter, childlike but wrong, floated through the hallways. But the worst of it came when she started seeing Emily out of the attic. It began subtly. Holly would find the doll sitting in different rooms, though she hadn't touched it since that first day. At first she convinced herself it was her imagination, or perhaps her mother had moved it before falling ill. But as time went on, the doll's appearances became more disturbing. One night, Holly woke to the sensation of someone watching her. Her eyes snapped open, and there, sitting at the foot of her bed, was Emily, her porcelain face smiling eerily in the moonlight. Holly's heart raced. She leaped out of bed and grabbed the doll, determined to rid herself of it once and for all. She marched downstairs, opened the front door, and hurled Emily into the garden, the doll landing with a soft thud on the overgrown grass. Satisfied, Holly locked the door and returned to bed. But sleep didn't come easily. Hours passed as Holly tossed and turned, her mind playing tricks on her. The house creaked with every gust of wind, and the shadows seemed to shift and crawl along the walls. And then the footsteps. Soft, deliberate steps padded down the hallway outside her bedroom. Holly sat up, her pulse pounding in her ears. The footsteps stopped just outside her door. She held her breath, waiting. The doorknob twisted slowly, then the door creaked open. In the dim light, Holly saw a small figure standing in the doorway. Emily, soaked from the rain, mud dripping from her porcelain face. Holly screamed. The doll's head tilted unnaturally to the side, and its mouth, previously painted in a sweet, innocent smile, twisted into a grotesque grin. The air in the room thickened with a palpable sense of malice, and a voice, not Holly's mother's, but a guttural, ancient whisper, filled the room. You can't get rid of me." Holly scrambled to her feet. The doll took a step forward, then another, its glassy eyes reflecting the faint light. Holly grabbed a nearby lamp and hurled it at the doll. The lamp shattered, but Emily remained unscathed. "I know what you did," the voice hissed, coming not from the doll itself, but from everywhere at once. Holly's mind raced. She didn't understand what was the doll accusing her of. She had done nothing, she was sure of it. "Your grandmother," the voice continued, "she trapped me in this prison by you. You set me free." Her grandmother had always been superstitious, a woman of strange rituals and whispered warnings. Holly remembered stories of a spirit, a vengeful ghost that haunted the family for generations. The doll wasn't just a toy, it had been a vessel, a cage for something dark and angry. Realizing this, Holly's fear turned to resolve. She couldn't let the spirit take control. She dashed past the doll, running to the attic, where she hoped to find some clue in the old trunks and boxes. Footsteps followed her, heavy and deliberate. When she reached the attic, she tore through the clutter, searching for anything that could help. At last, Holly found a dusty, leather-bound book filled with her grandmother's cryptic writings. She flipped through the pages, her hand shaking, until she found a passage about the doll. The spirit trapped inside had once been a woman wronged by the Arnold family, a servant accused of witchcraft and executed centuries ago. The curse had followed them ever since. There was only one way to end it. The doll had to be destroyed in fire, along with the bloodline that set the spirit free. But before Holly could react, the attic door slammed shut behind her, and Emily appeared once again, her eyes glowing with malevolent energy. Holly's heart raced as she grabbed the book and a box of matches from a nearby shelf. She had no choice. In one swift motion, she set the book ablaze and hurled it at the doll. Flames engulfed Emily, and the spirit screamed, a high-pitched wail that rattled the house to its foundation. The doll's porcelain skin cracked and blistered, the spirit's fury consuming it. But as the fire spread, Holly realized the terrible truth. Her grandmother's warning had been clear. To break the curse, the one who freed the spirit had to perish too. The house burned, flames licking at the walls, but Holly stood her ground. As the fire consumed the doll and the vengeful spirit within, she felt the weight of generations lift from her shoulders. The last thing Holly saw was the doll's charred remains crumbling to ash, and in that moment she knew finally the curse had ended. When the villagers came to investigate the fight, the next day they found the house reduced to rubble. There were no survivors. Among the wreckage they discovered a single, unburnt porcelain face, its eyes still gleaming with malevolent intent. The doll would always return. The villagers, unfamiliar with the tragic history of the Arnold family, assumed the fire had been an unfortunate accident. The old house on the cliffs had stood for centuries, but time had weakened its structure, they said. A gas leak, perhaps, or faulty wiring. But none could explain the peculiar condition of the porcelain doll that had been found among the ashes. Emily was placed in the care of the local museum, where relics from the Isle of Wight's history were displayed. She was an odd addition, but her flawless preservation amidst the ruins fascinated the curators. They set her up behind glass, labeling her as a curiosity from the Arnold House fire. Visitors would often comment on how lifelike her eyes appeared, how it felt as though they were being watched as they moved through the museum. Weeks passed without incident, and the townsfolk soon forgot about Holly Arnold and her mysterious demise. The museum, however, began to experience strange occurrences. At first, it was small things, a misplaced artifact, a locked door found open in the morning, the lights flickering after hours. The staff dismissed it as harmless, attributing the oddities to the quirks of the old building. But then came the sightings. One of the night guards, a man named Robert, was the first to report it. During his rounds late one evening, he swore he saw a little girl standing near the display case where Emily was kept. She wore an old-fashioned dress, her hair long and wavy, and she appeared to be staring at the doll. When Robert called out to her, she didn't respond. As he approached, the girl turned and walked into the shadows, vanishing without a trace. No child had been recorded entering the museum, and none had left. Robert's story was brushed off as fatigue or a trick of the light. But soon other employees began to notice strange happenings. Whispers echoed through the empty halls late at night, and the faint sound of footsteps could be heard in rooms that were supposed to be empty. The security cameras caught glimpses of movement, quick, fleeting shadows darting past the displays, but no one could ever locate their source. Then, one night, the museum's director, a woman named Marion, decided to stay late to investigate the rumors herself. She had never been one to believe in ghost stories, and the odd events had piqued her curiosity. Armed with nothing but a flashlight and her skepticism, Marion roamed the museum's halls long after closing time. As the hours ticked by, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. She passed by the display case where Emily sat, the doll's blank expression staring into the void. Marion stopped for a moment, studying the porcelain face. She couldn't quite put her finger on it, but there was something unsettling about the doll, as if it were more than just a relic. Shrugging off the feeling, she moved on. But as she turned the corner into another exhibit, Marion heard a soft giggle, like that of a child. She froze, her heart pounding. The sound came again, this time closer. She shone her flashlight around, but the beam only illuminated the still, silent displays. Marion called, her voice trembling slightly. No response. Just the distant hum of the building's ventilation system. She took a deep breath and continued walking, but the air felt heavier now, as if the darkness itself were pressing in on her. Marion turned another corner and nearly dropped her flashlight. Emily. The doll was no longer in her display case. Instead, she sat in the middle of the hallway, her glassy eyes fixed directly on Marion. The museum director's blood ran cold. This couldn't be possible. She had just passed the display case moments ago, and the doll had been inside. A rustling sound came from behind her. Marion spun around, the flashlight beam sweeping across the room, but it revealed nothing. When she turned back toward the doll, Emily was standing upright. Not sitting, standing. The giggle came again, louder this time, echoing through the darkened hall. Marion's instinct screamed at her to run, but she was rooted to the spot, paralyzed by the impossibility of what she was seeing. "You freed me," a voice whispered. It was the same guttural voice that had once tormented Holly. "Now we are bound." Marion felt a force, unseen but undeniable. The air grew colder, and a sharp pain shot through her chest. She gasped for breath, but her lungs refused to cooperate. In the dim light of her failing flashlight, she saw the doll's eyes glow faintly, a malevolent light that pulsed with each beat of her racing heart. "Join me." With the last of her strength, Marion managed to tear her gaze from the doll and stumble backward, but her legs gave way beneath her. She collapsed to the floor, her vision blurring as the room seemed to close in around her. The last thing she saw was Emily's porcelain face, grinning down at her as the world faded to black. The museum staff found Marion's body the next morning, slumped in the hallway. The cause of death was listed as a heart attack, but rumors spread quickly through the village. Whispers of the cursed doll, of the spirit that had claimed yet another victim, began to circulate once more. The museum was closed for a time, but eventually it reopened, with Emily still on display. After all, what harm could a doll really do? But every night, as the museum's halls fell silent, those who had seen too much knew the truth. The curse was far from over. And somewhere, deep within the Isle of Wight, a new family would soon face the horrors of a doll possessed by vengeance, waiting patiently for its next victim to set it free again. Because Emily, with her glassy eyes and innocent smile, would never stop. She would always return. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this story. Please don't forget to like, and even better, like and subscribe. Thank you very much, and I hope you have had or have a great day.